A wanderer through the occasional magic door, I move from world to world, and when not running role-playing games for some people and causing trouble for other people, I make podcast columns and reviews of role-playing game material. My companions include legendary Demilich Asuriak and grandmother hag Baba Yaga. And we waltz across time and space in Baba Yaga's magic dancing hut. This is a typical life for a podcaster. By comparison, James at Self-Critical Hits has his own Zord suit, similar to those employed by the Power Rangers. Perhaps unfortunately, his is that of a giant mechanical puppy. This episode discusses the best, worst, and odd episodes of the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon series. During the run of the show, there were 27 episodes across 3 seasons. Marvel Studios handled the design and theoretically composed the animation, though most of the actual work went to other studios. Toei Animation composed much of the best animation of the series. We start with the bad news, or the 5 worst episodes, the ones to avoid unless you're a completist, a masochist, or a masochistic completist. Eye of the Beholder, an early episode and a grossly immoral, stupid, and patronizing one at that. Here a beholder is destroyed by a flower. In the actual game of Dungeons & Dragons, a beholder is one of the most severely deadly monsters. Who knew beholders had an explosive allergy to violets?
Explosive allergy? What is that?
A Syriac, everybody. An explosive allergy. You know, one so wild that if the person with it encounters what they are allergic to, their anaphylactic shock is so severe they explode or melt or something.
Oh, is that what it is called?
Oh yeah, if werewolves ever figure out all they need to do to cope with silver is to use some over-the-counter antihistamine, a lot of people are going to be in severe, deep trouble. Anyway, in this episode, Eye of the Beholder, an adult betrays the kids, a reoccurring theme during the series. However, in this episode, the treacherous adult is not caught by the kids, never acknowledges any wrongdoing, unlike the episode Quest of the Skeleton Warrior, which has a similar plot. As part and parcel of never being caught, at the end of the episode, the treacherous adult is in fact thanked by the kids for his service and support. And remember, the part of the show people objected to back in the day were allegations of Satanism, not the behavior of the adult characters in the show. Night of No Tomorrow. The pilot of the series is sadly dull. Scribe Mark Evianer is a good writer and helped get the D&D cartoon series off the ground. But like many pilot episodes for other shows, this one is weak and dull. By comparison, the pilot episodes for Star Trek The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine are both mediocre works. Dungeon at the Heart of Dawn. This episode, like Citadel of Shadows, suggests too much backstory and a series plot arc for an episodic 1980s cartoon series to get away with. While Citadel of Shadow, discussed in a few moments, has good moments, Dungeon at the Heart of Dawn has mediocre animation, too many unintentionally silly moments, and has a threat more irritating than menacing. It also makes the Dungeon Master look like an incompetent putz, as the problems arise because he did not adequately warn the kids about the situation. And whatever warning he did provide probably came in the form of a riddle. Winds of Darkness. Like other problematic episodes in the series, Winds of Darkness suffers from missed opportunities. The kids are dealing with a new menace, one ready to complete a plot 1,000 years in the making, to ruin and rule the realm. Things really seemed to turn to shit for the realm about 1,000 years ago. Anyway, despite a strong opening, which removed party leader and combat engine Hank from the board right away, inconsistent writing and inconsistent animation bogs down the rest of the episode. The Traitor. The weakest and worst episode in the series is The Traitor, where everyone is a damned moron. Everyone. The kids, Venger, incidental characters, etc. And they all act out of character, too. The heroes have to save a group that is a cross between the Ewoks and Care Bears, who have all the martial prowess of gummy bears. No, not them. Not the cartoon gummy bears. The actual gelatinous gummy bears. Say what you will about the Ewoks, at least they were good in a fight. The animation is also weak throughout the episode, and Venger is undone when the characters throw candy at him. He apparently possesses an explosive allergy to the candy the bears produce.
I just remembered, when I was alive, I had an explosive allergy to candy too.
Really? What kind of candy?
Skittles.
Right. Moving on. The episode has one unintentionally funny moment where Venger has Bobby strapped spread eagle to a chandelier and hanging over a fire. Bobby's continued defiance makes it even funnier. Even so, it is a bad episode. Now on to 5 odd episodes and the honorable mentions. Garden of Zen. This episode features a couple of genuinely good twists and is one of the first in the series not to feature Venger as the antagonist. However, another plot bump is so transparent that it cannot function as the twist it is clearly intended to be. An uneven animation spoils much of the effect. However, Deanna is pretty badass throughout the episode. Citadel of Shadow. This episode reveals Venger had a sister named Karina, who he locked in a cave. The episode has nice moments and mostly good animation. It also has some silly designs, such as when Karina appears at first looking like an evil Shirley Temple, and later when she is dressed exactly like Venger. The episode also poses many unanswered questions. For example, the episode Dragon's Graveyard implied Venger is actually the Dungeon Master's son, and if Karina and Venger are siblings, is the Dungeon Master her father as well? He does not act very paternal in their scenes together. Who was the mother of Venger and Karina? If Venger has ruled the realm for close to 1,000 years, has Karina been locked in that cave for all of that time? The fact that even if the series had continued, these questions would never have been answered is a liability here. Though this is less of an issue and less irritating than in the episode Dungeon at the Heart of Dawn. Valley of the Unicorns. This is a solid episode and an excellent example of compressed storytelling, and as an episode it almost made it to the top 5 list. Paul Dini wrote this episode, and Dini would go on to describe some of the best episodes in the Batman animated series and the Superman animated series, each among the best programs of Western animation in the 1990s. Valley of the Unicorns is also a good example of how, ideally, an actual game of Dungeons and Dragons would go. Beauty and the Bog Beast. Another solid episode. Here Eric transforms into a monster and reluctantly steps up to help a tribe of abused and benign monsters. This is another episode where the Dungeon Master looks like, at best, a putz, as his warning about beauty that breeds the beast is so vague as to be useless. However, it is a good episode for Eric, the group, and features a villain other than Venger. The Time Lost. This episode is deeply curious and a thoroughly missed opportunity. In an effort to get the kids off his back, Venger uses a magic gate permitting time travel to arm a World War II German pilot with advanced weaponry. If Germany wins the war, history changes. The kids are never born and thus cannot hassle Venger about having only a single horn. One wonders how he would have dealt with the ensuing grandfather paradox. The real issue is that no one ever addresses the fact the pilot is a German fighting for the Axis in World War II, and Dungeon Master expressly calls the pilot a hero and says his heroism will help create the world into which the characters are born. The kids never object to the pilot or for which side he fought in the war. The pilot saying something to the effect of he had been drafted into the war and wanted something better would have cleared up many of these issues. Yet as this is unstated, it is like an 800-pound gorilla in the room that is also flatulent, that no one dares comment on or point out for fear of offense. So an episode that could have been about forgiveness and second chances, issues often touched upon by this show, is simply odd. Also, how could the German World War II pilot know how to operate a plane that even the kids, 40 years later in the same timeline, regarded as advanced to the point of being like something from Buck Rogers? At last we come to the good news, or the 5 best episodes. City on the Edge of Midnight. This is another good episode and a personal favorite. The animation rarely gets better during the run of the series than it is here. The villain is one of the most menacing of the show, and the kids get some moments of genuine happiness. They also work very well together. Lastly, it is also a decent model for how an actual game of Dungeons & Dragons should go, story-wise at least. The Lost Children. An episode featuring a nice mix of science fiction and fantasy tropes. This one is fun. It features robots and possibly the best reaction from Sheila to Venture.
How far? I've come from the children. We're going to rescue you.
How thoughtful of them. Only it is not I who needs rescue. It is you.
All too often, there is an unnecessary conflict between science fiction and fantasy tropes, creating the illusion that the two are incompatible. In the end, both are aesthetic choices, and can produce interesting results when combined. The design of the aliens in the show is also entertaining. It is also a good example of how, ideally, an actual game of Dungeons & Dragons would go. The Box. In this episode, the kids discover a magic box, one which looks like a traveling trunk, which opens portals to different places depending on where the box is physically located when opened. Stephen King has written stories about kids battling monsters in the novel It, and kids out on grisly expeditions in the novella The Body. He also often writes about seemingly mundane items investigated